Good evening and welcome to Real Talk on SABC 3. The stage is yours. It was back in 1963 when Africa became a pioneer as the first continent to focus on nation building through unity. And thus the Organization of African Unity, or OAU, was born. Since then, every year on May the 25th, we celebrate Africa Day. But it's not just the 25th we highlight. The entire month of May is dedicated to celebrating African pride. So in light of this, today we'll be talking about African identity and why it is important. Later on in the show, we'll be taking a closer look at defining and understanding colored identity. But first, what are the different ways in which we define ourselves as Africans? Is it in the languages we speak, the gender that we are and celebrate, the tribes that we are descended from, or our sexual orientation? Is one's identity important, and if so, why? To start off our conversation, welcome back to Real Talk, spiritual healer from the Gogo Institute of Spiritual Healing, Gogo Ndlanzi. Now pay special attention to the WhatsApp number on your screen. Gogo Ndlanzi will be taking your questions on anything related to spirituality and spiritual healing. Are there recurring dreams that you want explained? Do you want a better understanding of religion and African spirituality rather, and whether the two can coexist? Do you suspect you might have the calling? Get those voice notes in, keep them to 20 seconds so that Gogo can get to all of them. So therefore everyone must have a chance. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back. It feels like a new home.
Nah, because the last time we were sitting this way,
yeah,
and now we changed the lounge suite.
What happened? I love the intimacy.
I know this, but now there's other guests coming later.
Oh.
And I don't really like them as much as I like you.
Oh, so. I see. So you're trying to make me feel better.
Listen, last time, I mean, I went several places where people were just like, when is she coming back?
Yeah.
I myself, you know, people, you find yourself, you're 50 years old and you think that you're done with life and there's nothing more you need to discover about yourself. And I think you open something in people. And I'd like that door to stay open, which is why you are always welcome back to Real Talk.
Oh, of course.
And, you know, in lieu of African Month, let's talk about African identity. It's something that's always niggling with me is, what are the things that you believe that are not African, and we've adopted them from all the other identities, yet in our minds we believe that they're African and they're actually causing rift and unrest inside of us?
So firstly, I would like to say that I speak as a spiritualist.
Yeah.
So a spiritualist is the one that's forever evolving. So who I am today might be something else tomorrow. I don't speak as an expert. I don't speak as a know-it-all. So when I say this is what I believe, these are based on my own personal experiences and encounters with my own identity as an African. And also the other thing I wanted to say, when you said we're going to speak to colored people, I'm actually very mixed. My grandmother is half colored, half Indian. Yeah. You know, so, you know, some of the beautiness come from,
That's like we can't,
no, you can't, you know, and similarly to my father's side, it's just a mixed thing. So I love the concept of saying African, because for me it's like, when I say I'm African, I can't just say I'm Xhosa, I'm Zulu, I'm Sotho. So if African is the cradle of humankind, life began here. So as different races spread out and became what we called white, colored, Indian, and other thing, but their source of life is Africa. And if you look at where Africa is placed, is in the center of the world. So it is the heartbeat of the world. Is that some of us have forgotten, you know, that rootedness or that connection that we have to us as African. But some of the things we have that we assume about African culture is that it's very oppressive to women. That is the most common one. And that's what a lot of liberal or liberated people, young people, women who know themselves feel like the minute I start to associate myself as an African, it means that I'm going backwards. But we need to understand that a lot of tales that we are told about who we are tales that favor favor people who made us not like ourselves in the very first place. So it's very important that we interrogate and we don't take things on face value. So with me, my encounters was when I went to go and study African studies, and this was not at UNISA or any institution, it was run by a guy in Alex, and I studied it for a year. That's when I realized how African culture revered women, how the ground in which we walked in was revered because we were queens that ruled. We are queens that carried nations. So, mesithi mama uyinzala abantu. When you say ugogo wethu, that's true because we carry more than one. We're not caretakers of our own families, but we are caretakers and custodians of communities. We carry knowledge, we carry systems in place. So that's when I learned to be proud as a woman, because I was the only woman in class and it was mostly men. And what our teacher did is really challenge a lot of things, even around lobola, that it's about the man buying the woman. Because when I went into it, I didn't want to be lobolat, because the storyline, it was always like you were a commodity, that you were being,
product.
Yes, but
shifting from one place to the another.
For example, lobola is not about that. Lobola is about connecting two families together. It's about gifting of the families that say, now we are becoming a bigger system. And when they pay towards the woman, it's not a payment, it's not transactional. Transaction, the money is part of it, but the money is not the essence of lobola.
Hence,
and that's what
you never finish paying lobola off.
Exactly.
Because it means that we will always have those relations, because this person may have moved to you, but she's not removed from us as a family member.
And that's why some of you don't, in other cultures, you never lose your surname, because it's important to also be reminded of your own lineage as you enter.
Sorry to interrupt, that's what you were saying, that even taking your husband's surname, it's very un-African, it's a westernized thing.
No, the thing of changing surnames, all of those things are Western Union arrangements to say that now you're changing your surname and now you have to be like that. We do it because, and I don't want to say that everything we've adopted doesn't serve us, right? But we need to interrogate it before we can dismiss of our own and celebrate the other. That, if this serves us, how is it perpetuating stereotypes about our identity as Africans? So if we're saying that, yeah, I'm not going to get married because I don't want to change my surname because it takes away, because people build brands right now, whether in the, in the media space or in other spaces, and they want to hold on to that. In African culture, uba umasbanban, mina gahle gahle, because I'm married to the Ndlanzi family, they wanted to call me Maramalepe, but they couldn't pronounce Maramalepe. So they made it, Mandlanzi. So that's how also things change. African culture has never remained, or spirituality, let me speak about spirituality, has never remained stagnant. It's always evolving. If you watch who we are, we've always been innovators. We've never stayed in one position. When we come across something that's complex or something that's different and new, we never really criticized it or shunned it or called it names.
We find a way to immerse it in us.
But we saw it as godly, because uThixo, uNkulunkulu, who has no gender, no color, because if you hear those names, you are hearing of the word of divinity. And
so where did we come up with the notion that God is a man?
No, of course, from religion.
Okay.
Because I always say Africans were spiritual beings. So we always saw God, when we went to the river. When we sing, we were respecting the God in those waters. When we go entabeni, when we sing, we were respecting, because in our way of being, we always connected to divinity. When I walked into your households, bengzoti baga ngisengifikile ninekhaya bakasibanibani emakhosini siyakhuleka. What I'm saying is that I respect the presence of God, and that's why people said Africans serve gods. We don't serve gods. We speak to God in a specific way when we are asking for a specific thing.
So, I mean, I'm glad that you started our discussion off with, these are my opinions from a spiritual place. Let's talk the ever-going debate about who is African and who isn't, right? What color is African?
For me, when I speak, because people can say, obviously black people are seen as Africans because they are made of melanin, right? And melanin, people who then have the ability scientifically to produce that high amount of melanin are black people. So automatically they fall into that category. But if you go have melanin and you denounce everything about your melanin, how, if you criticize everything about your melanin, from your hair, from your nose, from all of those things, how then do you then celebrate being an African? Because for me, African is the spiritedness in you. It's knowing that the divine resides in you and is interconnected to the trees around, to your neighbor, to your friends, to somebody. So for me, that's what African is about, is understanding the incremental part of divinity. Lomvelinqangi is the power that resides in everyone else. And therefore, when I see you, I honor those you walk with and along with you. Therefore, I won't treat you less human. than anybody else.
And that is what an African is. Look, we have an exciting new opportunity for you to potentially walk away with some amazing prizes with Real Talk and Huawei. If you want to find out how, check this out.
Real Talk, Huawei and MTN are partnering up to celebrate the release of the new Huawei P20 series. The Huawei P20 Pro, the world's first triple Leica lens camera, is partnering with MTN, SA's fastest mobile network, to help you capture the best moments with your friends and family. We'll be capturing timeless moments and connecting with people in need while giving you the chance to win the Huawei P20 Pro and 10 gigabytes free once-off MTN data. So tune into Real Talk for your chance to win.
And welcome back to Real Talk with Anele right here on SABC3. The stage is yours. As Africans, we are well aware of the strong ties that bind us with our ancestors who no longer walk the earth. We also know about how a select few of us get chosen to answer to a higher spiritual calling. But with news emerging of more and more people answering to this calling, such as the likes of actress Latoya Makene, media personality Boiti Tulo, and recording artist Boza of Squatter Camp fame, it's hard to not ask the question, what are the reasons for more people than ever being called to become healers? Luckily for us, Gogo Ndlanzi is here to answer that for us. So is it because there's more media covering, you know, abantu who get the calling? Or are there more people really just getting the calling? And what's the reason behind that?
No, Africa is waking up to itself. That's what's going on here, because it's not new that people buy a twasa. You know, it's just that then these people are in media spaces and they've got social media platforms where they share their stories, you know, and I celebrate those who can own themselves and be unapologetic about, you know, what really attests to their African identity. It's very incremental to call yourself African, knowing ukuthi ubani, uzalo abobani. So the minute you start to denounce your very own, how do you then claim to be one of their own? So you can't say to me, I'm a proud African, but I want nothing to do with my grandfather who passed away because abafileo amadimoni. For me, it's a contradiction, because remember, in African culture and spirituality, we don't die. Siyalala.
Yeah, you
right?
rest
and
you watch over.
Yes, and then, no, after the resting, there are processes and rituals that get performed. Remember, ritual feeds the spirit and it helps the spirit to transcend, to understand that it no longer has a body. So it can't want to function as a body and then therefore becomes a hindrance, but it becomes a spirit that's connected to Umvelinqangi, that when we call upon it, calling upon, asking for them to make a way, asking for them to pave a path, not praying to them.
So in your opinion, there should be more of us getting the calling, because as soon as I'm waking up to my ancestors, it means that now my spirits are in line. Therefore, I am able to then to get those messages.
All of us are called, but we are all called to do different things. Even those who go for initiation, they don't all initiate to be practicing sangomas, because the fear of people is fanele ngihlale endumbeni manje and throw bones and do that. The minute you understand I am called and honor that you are called and say, what is the calling me to what? Because some people are called and they have to move into corporate spaces like some of the students here and really shift the mindset about what is an African wear, what is a business wear. Because right now we can throw in afros and this look and still shop at the office without people asking us to let go of this thing because it's unbusinessy, you know, it doesn't look business-like, because we need to understand that systems of operation are still very Western orientated. So we are called, because if we're going to be proudly African, we need to own all of us unapologetically. So many people are called because change has got to happen. Africa needs to reclaim itself. People have to return home.
Gogo Dineo, I'd love to monopolize you, that you can be all mine, but the amount of voice notes that are coming in means the entire country, they'd also like a piece of you.
Yes.
So I'm going to step aside and we're just going to roll the voice notes, and then if you can connect and see how you can shed some light on this. Can we roll the first one, please?
Hi, I'm Portia. I dreamed of my boyfriend who just died 2 weeks ago. So the last few days I dreamed of him. He was sick and all that. But then the day before yesterday, I dreamt of him. He was all right, he was happy, but I couldn't hear what he was exactly saying to me. So I just want to know what the dream was all about.
So I think I need to say, because we're going to get a lot of dreams, so I explain why we dream. So we are spirit beings having a human experience. Then how do we connect to spirit? It's through dreams. Because when you are dreaming, your spirit travels and connects with other spirit, Amadlo Zagini, uNkulunkulu, connects with the divine energy. And then when you say, I have dreamt, you have recalled an experience that you've had. So these experiences happen at multiple levels. One is that we go into that level because there are things that we are holding in our subconscious mind. So if we have lost a loved one and we have not gotten over it, or we're in pain, or we're in trauma, some of the dreams are inviting us to pay attention to those things. The other thing is that our dreams are prophetic. So meaning, and those are people who have spiritual gifts, your dreams are indicating you towards the path that you need to walk towards. So people who are called to become sangomas, prophets, or spiritual healers, it's very important that you do have some dreams, because how then do you connect what they're wanting you to do if you're not hearing them or seeing them?
So in Portia's instance, I mean, the boyfriend is quite a recent death. So that is still her spirit dealing with the loss.
It's Portia dealing with the loss that is held at her subconscious mind. Because sometimes we suppress our own pain, because we are always told be strong, this too shall pass. We don't allow ourselves to be, and we have lost systems of grieving processes, because remember, people always think utukzila is to oppress another of their freedom. But tukzila is to allow you to be in mourning, to be in pain, to be in tears. So when you transition out of that process and you meet a new life partner, you're not carrying the pain of the past. You can actually engage with this person as a new person in your life and not asking them to replace the person that you have lost. So that's why mourning processes are important. So we've lost some of those processes because we deem them as irrelevant. But it's not only about tukniba is impahla, is tease. No, it's to also allow your boyfriend to understand that they don't have a body. So once you have a new man in your life, they don't have to interfere. That's why also after that process, you do what we do, a cleansing. A cleansing is a letting go of the old and an invitation of the new. So when you do that particular cleansing, is to also cut physical ties with your partner. So when you are with a new partner, there are no interferences or energies that want to interfere. So as a Bantu who are African, because whether you are African colored or you are African white or you are African black, we all have what we call rituals, things that feed our spirit. We need to be very cognizant of what are those things that help us, because rituals help us be grounded. They help us transition, and as we transition, we elevate and we connect to divinity.
Yeah, okay, Portia, it wasn't my question, but it certainly answered the question for me. I hope it did the same for you. Let's get the next voice note, please.
Hi guys, I just want to know, how do we explain that one person has two beliefs, like having ancestral beliefs and also having God's belief? So how does that happen? Like, can you just explain more further on that?
That's something that you'll always get asked.
But you see the thing, that's another misconception. The minute you start to believe your ancestors are ungodly, you've moved off the African radar mark, whatever that your ancestry is. Because the thing is that people get confused by religion. And religion doesn't confuse anyone. It's those who interpret religion that confuses people. Because if you look at the storyline of religious people, it's all based on people who have passed on. So those people are ancestors, but they might not be African ancestry. So why do we denounce our own, but we want to celebrate the other? Whose God are you praying to? And how can the God that you're praying to, that doesn't look like you, doesn't resonate with you, doesn't relate to you, how is that God going to answer your prayers if you fail to honor the God that looks and sounds like you? That's all. If I dishonor you, how am I asking of myself to prosper if I see you less of human than I see myself? Because when I see you, I see the God in you. And the minute I celebrate you, I celebrate myself. So as Africans, we need to start to understand that whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, whether it's Buddhism, those religious belief systems are based on a particular person who does not exist in a physical sense, but exists in the spirit world. So similar with African spirituality, Labantu, we don't go bother them at the gravesite. That's correct, because in African spirituality, we don't phahla amadlozi emathuneni. Ituna, it's for umzimba to rest.
Yes, the
But
spirit is not there.
no, it's not there. That's why I say people fail to understand rituals. Ngoba bathi umuntu uyakhushula, meaning we resurrect. We perform rituals to resurrect the spirit. And we're not playing God because we invite God in that process of resurrection to say, awuphile umoya wakasibanibani, azoba yidlozi elihle. Let there be an ancestor of light that can actually help us, that because ancestors are intermediaries between us and creation. The same way that when you say you would call a Buddha, you'd call a Jesus, you'd call a Mahomet, who is no more in a physical sense. So it's the same way you would call utatomkhulu wako, you'd call ugogo wako. So similar principles. It's just that those who interpret religious texts want us to believe that when we own ourselves, and we proudly do it so, they want to tell us that we are off the radar and we are ungodly in our doing. How can God make a mistake by producing such beauty?
Sure. Next voice note, please.
Good evening, Anele, and now Sawubona Thokoza Gogo Ndlanzi. Into engifuna ukuyibuza, abomama abala eSouth Africa, sithi obusisi, abodadewethu, are they allowed to marry more than 3 times? Because lemindeni yonke, there's going to be conflict in the afterlife. That's how I believe.
For me, it's a very patriarchal question. You know, you should ask if people are allowed to marry more than 3 times. Why women? Because for me, what happens is that we're not held at hostages by things that we sign up for. I told you that who I am today might be something different 2 years from now, because our needs changes and our wants changes. So in marriages, there are rituals that are performed to cement the relationship, so that because asihlanganiswa just in the physical sense, we also recognize that we carry spiritual identities. Then we need to match those spiritual identities so that we are in synergy and we synchronize as we flow and shift and change in life. But should it happen that the other partner is not moving in the same rhythm, because people always think it's only in extreme circumstances, like in cases of violence in a marriage. But you might be that you've fallen out of love, because who Anele was 3 years ago when they got married and who they are now, is not
and that is okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But what you then do is the same way in which you performed rituals. You go back and say, this doesn't serve me anymore. Well, this is what I was told when I got married, that you're not signing your life away, because we don't know what tomorrow holds for you. So if you feel like this is it, we'll do another rituals, just partly, and let the ancestors know that.
So it is important to not just, because I mean, we are South African, we have adopted, you know, getting married, it's a legal act.
Yes.
It's a legal act. Yes, we can bring the spirits into it, but initially it's also a legal act.
Yeah.
So as much as I then get divorced in the court of law,
you need to get divorced.
I need to get divorced from the ancestors as well.
Yes, but I want to say something. Yes, everyone is allowed to do what makes sense for them. We can't dictate those things. But what's very important for people is remember that every time you move from one person to the other, you carry their energy with them. So be cognizant of yourself, of how many energies do you want to carry. So what it means is that you can't just be jumping into marriages all the time, because marriage is a level of commitment. It's saying that I'm going to let go of certain things so I could be here. And you know, there's a lot of compromises that happen when one enters the marriage. So let's not get married because we are told as women, it is important for a woman to get married. You are getting old, you have to have children. Those storylines don't serve us anymore. Be married because it's what's going to save you. And if it's not going to save you, remain unmarried. There's nothing wrong with being a woman and not being married.
Gogo Dineo, I cannot think of a better way than to celebrate My Africa Month than having you here. Thank you very much. She is a wealth of knowledge, who is passionate about enlightening people to view life from a different perspective, to allow for holistic healing. A big thank you to Gogo Dineo, as always. She will be back after the break. What happens when everyone around you thinks that you're not white enough to be white, but you're not black enough to be black? We're talking colored identity after the break. Trust me, this is a conversation we've been wanting to have for a long time. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us. I'm laughing already. Welcome back to Real Talk right here on SABC 3. The stage is yours. Look, they are descended from a diverse and complex lineage as a result of European colonizers settling in Africa, resulting in various mixes of ethnicities. That word. At least one genetic study indicated that colored people have an ancestry consisting of the Khoisan, African, European, and Asian ethnic groups. But what does it mean to be colored, and how do they describe and define their own identity?
I'm quite reluctant to use that term mixed because it implies that other races are pure.
I am mixed race.
Xhosa isn't anything pure. There's also been a lot of mixing going on there, the same with white people in this country.
I think most people, when they look at me, they automatically want to know what am I, or who am I, or where am I from.
Like, I almost feel embarrassed to say that for the longest time, I did not want to be associated with that term, being colored, you know, because the term was given to us.
Wat is colored? Dat sê nie waar jy vandaan afkom nie. Dit sê nie wie jou mense is ook nie. Wat verwyder al die geskiedenis van jou, want hy's redig ons wealth.
When I talk about a Cape color, I'm talking more of an attitude than the color of my skin. So yes, I am a Cape color.
I think we're just like a mixed breedy of everything that's happened, and you know, you like the special pot at the end of it all. You know, it tastes good, looks nice because you do everything in.
To unpack all of this, please welcome communications consultant Lance Classen, as well as comedian and founder of BrainO.com, Charles Ash. Guys, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad this is not a sensitive topic, right? Because we have to talk about it.
Absolutely.
You look surprised when I said it's not a sensitive topic.
It is a sensitive topic, but you know, just to come out and say, you know, I'm just quite tired of every year. It's a perennial occurrence. You know, it used to be on special assignments. Special assignments used to be the only window that people had into the lives of colored people, and it was just this morbid fascination that people would watch how the colored community is devolving, and it was always either gangsterism, drugs, or some other criminal element, etc. And that was the only window that people had into the colored community. And so, why aren't there shows about why is Indian identity or white identity or black identity? Why is the colored community always trotted out every year? What's colored identity? And the whole country sits and watches in judgment. Okay, jump, skip, and you know, make sure, show us, prove your cultural worth, and you know, and then people decide as to whether we are a culturally viable social group. I'm just quite tired of it.
I suppose when I'm saying that, I'm glad it's not a sensitive thing, that we can talk about it, because you know, sensitive things, people don't want to talk about it, and it's like we're just going to sweep it under the carpet and carry on with our lives.
But I want to talk about it to reach a conclusion, so that we can move past this
what
thing, this
conclusion
obsession.
would you like to reach?
To normalize colored identity and stop it from being so othered and so maligned and disregarded. You know, I'm aware that colored identity is a problem identity, but it's not so problematic that it should be othered into perpetuity and forever and a day. That I have a problem with. We need to start feeling like we're part of this country.
Okay, then let's unpack this. Lance, you know, looking at that video, the first thing the one lady said was, I have an issue with being called mixed race because it gives off the feeling that all the other races are pure, right? So and I understand that some colored people don't like to be called colored people. They don't want to be called that. What is the correct term that you are comfortable with?
For me, I'm black of mixed descent.
Okay.
Because there is a colored community, but it's in the umbrella of blackness. It doesn't sit apart. There's no middle ground, because the experience of blackness in this country is an experience of oppression. And colored people, whatever you want to spell it or call it, because he's the advocate of saying that we should call it you should change the spelling of it. And I agree with him.
To what?
K-U-L-L-I-D. K-U-L-L-I-D. That's
because
how
because if you go into the original legislation from the Population Registration Act, it describes colored people in a negative identity. A colored person is not white. A colored person is not black African. A colored person is not a Turk. And it goes on and on and on and on. You cannot be a people in a negative identity.
Yeah.
So my argument is this, is that we should have accept that it's within a broad black identity. Just like you get flavors of blackness in the Caribbean, in Brazil, across the world. Here's a good example. I'm going to mention 4 people that all have mixed race, but they all classify themselves as black. Mariah Carey, Trevor Noah,
Alicia Keys, Halle Berry.
No, I'm talking about direct parents, where one parent is white.
Halle Berry's mom is white and her dad is black. Yeah.
But the same thing goes for Ian Khama, Walter Sisulu.
Yeah.
So these people can all say that they're mixed race, but not all mixed race is colored. Yeah. It has to come from a certain community. And the community has its roots in slavery and Khoisan. And this is a forgotten history in South Africa, that majority of colored people, specifically in the Cape, are descendants of slaves. And we seem to have forgotten that people were once property in this country. When I speak to some of my black African friends, they talk about, no, that's my slave name. If somebody gave them an English name. And I said, no, that's not your identity was never usurped from you. You were never brought here in shackles. You were never, where everything that's part of you, it's been stripped to the core, and the only thing that you're left with are fragments of identity. And that fragments form this community. And it's a beautiful, empowering community that supports one another. But the structure of it comes from slavery.
Okay, so if you have one white parent and one black parent, then you call yourself mixed race, right?
Yes.
So they're not allowed to call themselves colored.
Look, people are allowed to call themselves whatever they
Yeah,
want to.
we're not gonna be
alright.
policing
I
their
agree with Lawrence on a couple of points there. Where I disagree with him is where I agree with him is that colored is definitely a cultural identity. Right? It's you cannot be categorically separated from black people in society, materially separated, spatially separated, and not have a unique culture emerge as a result of this. And that's what colored identity. Colored identity is really just a creolization of all the inputs, all the cultural, linguistic inputs from the Cape Colony and elsewhere where you had miscegenation and mixing between black and white people, and then you have these offspring that are then kept away from the black people and the colored and the white people, and therefore creolize and mix things up and create their own languages.
Because your very identity is a criminal act.
Exactly. Well, exactly. So. But we are disagree with Lawrence is when he used Khoisanism as if to say that if you don't have Khoisan identity lineage, then you are not a colored. I think that is a profoundly parochial, limiting way to perceive colored identity, that it's rooted exclusively in Khoisanism. As a person from KZN, I can trace my origin. From the Eastern Cape, my parents Xhosa, my father and my grandparents in Limpopo, Kumbani, Shangaan. So there's as far as I can trace my family tree, there's no Khoisan. Does that mean I'm less colored or not colored when I grew up in that same cultural conditions, in the same communities, and have the same social experiences as everybody else? So I just think it's very parochial.
Okay.
I look at I'm fine with the Khoisan.
Can I take a break?
Absolutely.
Luckily, we've got time. We have got time to unpack this, and I can see you brought the facts, okay? You brought the passion. When it comes to stereotypes about different ethnic groups, no one gets spared, but at some point a line has to be drawn to remind everyone of when negative stereotypes stop being funny and they stop being harmful to people's identity. We'll take a look at some of the stereotypes around colored people after the break. You're more than welcome to jump in on this conversation, and your insecurities around what you are labeled. Send us a WhatsApp voice note. They'll answer. Come back. And welcome back to Real Talk with Anele right here on SABC 3. As always, the stage is yours. A humble and supremely talented athlete announced himself on a world stage in 2015. When he won gold at the 400-meter final, it was at the IAAF World Championships in Beijing. Soon after that, every South African could not stop speaking about Wade van Niekerk. But it was his superb run in the 2016 400-meter final at the Olympics in Rio that had all of us wanting to claim in. However, a Twitter war soon broke out between black and colored people, with black people saying Wade represents all of us, and colored people refuting that with Wade is not black, he is colored. Now, let's talk about Nicholas, you joining us, right? We're talking colored identity with my guest, Lance Classen, who's a communications consultant, Charles Ash, founder of braino.com. We now welcome to the conversation comedian Nicholas Goliath. Sorry, Nicholas, I almost forgot to say hello there.
No, it's fine. No problem.
So, as a colored person, do you find yourself stuck not being white enough to be white and not being black enough to be black? Or are you rather happy with the fact that you are where you are? And I'm not going to say in the middle. You're just where you are.
Look, I'd have to say I'm happy with where I am, man.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard the term, during apartheid we weren't white enough, now post-apartheid we're not black enough. And yeah, I suppose there is some reality to the statement, but I also just at the same time feel like I'm happy with who I am. I'm proud to be colored, known as a colored person, and at the end of the day, I feel like you've just got to get up and do your thing. Doesn't matter what color you are, where you're from, what your background is. You got to get up and make the thing work for yourself. in life in general. So, yeah, like I said, there is a bit of reality there, but at the same time, I'm happy with where I am.
Lance, what's the ideal situation here? Because would you like for the name colored to be done away with and there's a new name? Because you're not mixed race, you're colored.
I'm comfortable with the term colored.
You are?
I'm uncomfortable.
Because I get that, you know, some colored people say
it's not my identity. It's somebody else's identity that was pushed onto me. Okay. So they created this identity. Yeah. So you have to talk about ownership of your of self. So I'm not trying to be prescriptive to anybody. But for me, every time when you get this form, you know, what's your race?
Yeah.
And I see colored, I actually take time out to think about every time I fill that form in.
So do you want the census form? Because it's there.
Yeah, and that's
what do you tick on the census?
And I think this is
I've ticked colored twice.
and I think this is the issue that comes over there, is that I know the history and the origins of that term. I know it was a prescribed identity. I know there were people that had to go through all sorts of tests and pencil tests. Yeah. Families were divided because of this. There were situations where, in the apartheid state, if your father was white and your mother was black, and you happened to be colored, you couldn't stay in the same place. Trevor Noah is an example of that. But if you read Trevor's book, when they moved to a colored community, he wasn't accepted over there because he stood out because he spoke English in this Afrikaans-speaking community. So there's a real grappling that has to take place. I still think there is a community. I'm not denying that there's not a community. I'm arguing that the terminology has to change and there has to be a reconstitution of the history of the community. There has to be a source mythology that we can all rally around.
You're going to have to unpack it. How? Like, when? How does it start? What is the first thing we should be teaching?
So the first thing that we should be taught is that I'm glad that's because they're rewriting the history syllabus at the moment. And one of the things that we have to be taught is that where did this population come through where, think about this, you have a black person and a white person, they create a child, yet that makes the majority of the population. The maths doesn't make sense in the Western Cape specifically. So where that means, if it's a mathematical equation, there's a factor that's missing in there. So where did that population come from? And it came from slavery, it came from the Khoisan. And there's a conscious amnesia of forgetting slavery and the First Peoples. And he is actually quite right when we talk about colored communities, not a singular community. There's no singular colored community. His history is different from my history, and because we come from different parts of the country.
Yes, but is it not difficult?
Yes, no, I clearly certainly do not want to splinter the community more than it already has. Okay, the colored community was afflicted and affected by colonial and apartheid legislation equally. So whether you were in the Western Cape, which was an ex-Dutch colony, or whether you were in the Transvaal, ex-Dutch colony, or whether you were in Natal, which is an ex-British colony, you experienced the legislation was applied uniformly, and that's why you've got this overarching, uniform, very clearly similar cultural manifestations. You know, it comes through in the structures of the schools, the structures of our communities, the kind of work that our parents had and our grandparents had, and etc. And so this has created a fairly uniform layer within the colored community, and this is why I would not want to use to divide the community any more than it already is. I'm a colored person. I struggle with Afrikaans. You know, my Afrikaans teacher in high school will tell you. You know, I scraped it, and but when people see me as a colored person, you know, one of the things they expect is they want to start rattling Afrikaans, and I'm like, hey, hold up, you know. So there are lots of expectations, you know, around you as a colored person that you are expected to be this way. And you were talking earlier about negative stereotypes. My problem with that is that when it comes to the colored community, we're only known as through the negative stereotypes, and this stems from a lack of media within the broader South African space. The SABC, for example, still does not have a policy on how to address colored people. There's no colored radio station in the Indian community. At only 2.5% of the population has Lotus FM. That's using our tax money, you know, to to produce media for the colored for the Indian community. But where's the colored community's media? Are we part of South Africa or not? So when we speak about this othering of the colored community and this categoric separation, it's clearly manifest. We're supposed to be living in a dispensation where all groups are equal. But for example, media is the most manifest example of just how colored people are excluded from the conversations that are happening in South Africa.
I suppose you're very right, but I also suppose it's because, you know, when you look at colored people, they just either put you under black or white. You know, there isn't that
I am
identity.
politically black, socially colored. That is how I identify, and I would encourage all colored people to identify that way. Politically black, socially colored.
Politically black, socially colored. We'll discuss that a bit more. Nicholas, I want to come to you when we come back from the break. I want to know, do you feel that there is no representation for you as a colored person on South African television? Remember, we've got a chance for you to win with Huawei right here on Real Talk. All you need to do is pay attention to the following bit of information. Here's a quick look.
Real Talk, Huawei and MTN are partnering up to celebrate the release of the new Huawei P20 series. The Huawei P20 Pro, the world's first triple Leica lens camera, is partnering with MTN, SA's fastest mobile network, to help you capture the best moments with your friends and family. We'll be capturing timeless moments and connecting with people in need while giving you the chance to win the Huawei P20 Pro and 10 gigabytes free once-off MTN data. So tune into Real Talk for your chance to win.
Welcome back to Real Talk. We're about to wrap up this conversation on colored identity, and I must admit, even I am agreeing and I'm getting enlightened. There has been no, representation for colored people in South Africa. Nicholas, would you agree with that? When you look at a TV, do you feel that there's no representation unless you're being portrayed as gangsters, outcasts?
Yeah, that's the problem. It always comes back to the stereotypes, and unfortunately, stereotypes are all negative. Whether you're black, white, Indian, doesn't matter. The stereotypes are negative. But my problem is that we're not represented on TV. Every time, I go for castings for adverts, TV shows, all types of things. And every time they're casting a colored character, or 9 out of 10 times, we need a Cape Town accent. We need somebody that looks gangster. And I just feel like we've passed that stage. That's why I'm at a stage, that's why I was saying earlier, we've got to do the thing for ourselves. Like, if we're going to sit back as colored people and wait for white people or black people or Indian people or Chinese, it doesn't matter. If we're going to sit back and wait for people to do things for us, then we're going to consistently be sitting back and waiting. That's why we started our business. We were just tired of waiting for somebody to provide an opportunity for us, and we decided to provide the opportunity for ourselves. Yes, we were fortunate, or in a place of where we were able to do it and go and do our own things, which a lot of colored people and a lot of people, minorities, don't have the opportunity. But it's about just getting up and doing the thing. I feel like in South Africa, our problem is that we want to blame somebody all the time. For every time something's wrong, we've got to blame somebody. Instead of just taking responsibility, getting up and doing whatever needs to be done to get to the next stage, you're never going to go anywhere. So then I'm just like, let's just do it ourselves.
But Lance, what are we doing? Because, we're adults, right? In a way, it's difficult to bend the tree that we are right now. But you have kids, and you have colored kids that are growing up. What are you doing to make sure that they don't grow up with these identity issues?
With me, it's more complex than that. My wife's black, so what I have is a kid that is growing up in a colored community and a Motswana. And so that's what we're trying to give this kid to the world, is that the kid has to understand that she has to be at home in my family in Cape Town and my wife's family in Mahikeng.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get her for that kid, that she's not an either or, but part of the rich tapestry of the full South African life. And that's what we're trying to engineer with the kid.
Sorry, continue.
Please add quickly, Nicholas.
No, I just wanted to say, my thing with that is it's not, I feel like it's not the kid's responsibility. It's the family, because that's where the difference in treatment comes from. The colored family will treat the kid differently to the black family, and both families are going to treat the kid like you're not actually one of ours. Where at the end of the day, the family, the people that are the adults, should be the ones accepting and making it a normal thing.
Lance, Charles, 1 minute. So I'm going to let you wrap, and then I'm just going to say goodbye. Should we not be doing away with the titles, like you're saying, that you're not coming to a colored house, you're not going to a black house, you're just a child that is growing up?
Okay, look, South Africa has a fundamental problem with racism and the distribution of resources with regards to inequality. We also have problems in society with things like patriarchy, where would we combat patriarchy by saying, let's not use any gender terminology. There'll be the word man and the word woman is barred, boys and girls, those terms are barred, and then therefore we expect to get rid of patriarchy. We're not going to get rid of racism by, changing terminology and doing, smart, slick footwork with verbiage and words. That's not going to happen. We actually need to make structural changes within our society. And my end game with regards to the advancing of the colored identity is in order to get colored people, state media, legitimize the colored identity, stop this othering of colored people, and remove the question marks around colored identity so that the community can progress, express itself equally within broader South African society, and become more of an asset to this country.
I needed to hear all of that, actually. I had never thought of this, and now it's in my realm. Now I'm thinking about it. Thank you so much to all my guests for enlightening me and you so much. Tomorrow, singer-songwriter Shikana is with us, and new SAFM breakfast show host Stephen Grootes will be popping in. Plus, May the 24th sees top African business leaders discuss the benefits of shared value in African business. It's all happening at the Maslow Conference Center in Sandton, and we're giving you a chance to win yourself 2 tickets. Log on to @RealTalk3 on Twitter, as well as the Real Talk Facebook page for entry details. Do not miss Isadingo. It's coming up next. Goodbye.